let's talk about Rugose corals. These are Rugose corals. They are an extinct class of corals that was very, very abundant throughout a lot of early Earth's history. They lived pretty much through the Ordovician to the end of the Permian period. So these guys were around for pretty much 200 million years straight. Now these guys were interesting because they're not really all that similar to modern corals that we have today. The most well-known and popular corals that we know of today are all colonial, meaning there's a bunch of very small polyps attached to kind of a main skeleton structure, which is called the corallite, which is basically just where all of the polyps attach and form that big colonial organism. Now, there are some modern corals that are solitary, living on their own, meaning there's just a singular polyp attached to its own corallite. As of right now, most corals are colonial and not solitary, but with the Rugose coral, there was quite a lot of both. There is a lot of different species of Rugose corals with different lifestyles and habitats and structures. Some were colonial, like we see with a lot of modern corals, where a lot of polyps are attached to the same corallite and form kind of a large, sprawling reef structure. However, a lot were also solitary, again with that singular polyp attached to a singular corallite. Some of these solitary corals were also called horn corals, and they could get ridiculously large, up to around a meter in length. Now today, with most modern corals, they don't get nearly that large, with some of the largest being just under half a foot or 12-ish centimeters in length. These Rugose corals, the solitary horn corals, while a lot of them were these small colonial polyps that we're used to in modern corals, a lot of them got ridiculously large. Now, similarly to the modern corals, the Rugose corals likely had a collection of stinging cells to use in hunting, and they were carnivorous, like many modern corals. They would use their stinging cells or nematocysts to kind of paralyze their prey, and then the polyps would just eat them. Many of the Rugose corals that were around back then, again, were quite small, so they would be kind of micro-carnivores, basically just feeding on small planktons. But many of the larger coral polyps could eat quite a lot bigger foods. Now you may be thinking, if these guys were so abundant and so diverse and so just everywhere in the ancient oceans, what happened to them? Where are they now? Why did they go extinct? And that would be due to our friend the Permian extinction event. I talked a lot more in detail about the Permian extinction about a month or so ago, and it's basically just the worst time period ever in the history of Earth to be alive. During the Permian extinction, or the Great Dying, over 95% of all marine life went extinct, including the both major groups of corals, the Rugose corals that we just talked about, as well as the tabulate corals, which made up pretty much all of the coral life back then. Now, other species did survive and diversify into the coral species that we have now that are also in danger of extinction due to climate change and pollution and a bunch of stuff, but all of that, the Rugose corals did go extinct, but we do have a good amount of fossil evidence because due to the skeleton structure made of calcite, they did preserve quite well, and since they were so abundant for such a long period of time, we do have a lot of fossil evidence for them. So we do have quite an abundance of Rugose coral fossils that we can use to learn about the conditions and periods and life of the time back when they lived.